Time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors. Our big sponsor, thank you to Eisenhower's Tioga County Harley-Davidson, South Mansfield. Stop on in for all your riding accessories, service work, and of course, if you're looking for a brand new or pre-owned Harley-Davidson, they got you covered at Eisenhower's, our sponsor, and Janet Vannoy, our guest here, visiting her location here in Mansfield. Hi, Janet.
Hi.
How are you today?
Oh, I'm fine, Kevin.
We first talked about getting together months ago. This took forever.
Take a long time.
And here we are. So tell me about yourself. What year were you born?
I was born in 1936 on North Williamson Road in Blossburg.
1936. You get around great. That's amazing. You're doing wonderful.
Well,
I would not have guessed 1936 for you.
I just had a birthday, January 16th.
Oh, my birthday is January the 20th, so our birthdays are not too far apart.
Fine, yeah.
Yep.
Like I said, I was 88 years old.
Wow, happy birthday to you. 88 years old. So let's talk about where were you born?
In Blossburg on North Williamson Road at our home, and Dr. Matters, I think, was the physician that...
You got a good memory if you remember who delivered you. That's a very early memory. So you were delivered at the Blossburg Hospital?
No, at our home. The doctors came right to the house and delivered the babies.
Was that intentional to be born at the house?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the way they did it back then. I'm not sure when Blossburg Hospital opened.
It was open, but I think it might have been for the miners and more it's
probably.
a certain organization. So
But so, in fact, I think most of us were all born at home. I come from a big family, and I'm not sure about my older siblings where they were born, but I'm sure at home.
Yeah.
But not in the same house that I was in. You know, a lot of them were gone.
what did your parents do for work when you were
My
first
father
born?
worked in J.P. Ward Foundry. He ran a machine up there. And my mother was a little bit of everything. She was a reporter. She wrote for the different papers. She was involved in Legion and VFW and Gold Star Mothers because my only brother was MIA in Korea. I think he was 20.
Oh, wow.
And they never did
Yeah.
find him during the Korean War. He was a gunner on a B-52, and they just surmised that he probably went down in the ocean.
That had to be tough.
There's his picture.
Oh, yes. Yep, I'm looking over a picture of him now. Wow. So you went to school in Blossburg? Mm-hmm. What was that like? Do you have any memories of school?
I enjoyed school, and like I was in a lot of different, we had tumbling and we had different kind of sports that we played, and I was a cheerleader, so I was very active. When I was in school. I think I graduated in 53.
From Blossburg High School.
Blossburg High School. In fact, there was 10 in our family that graduated from Blossburg High School.
So what was school like back in the late 40s, early 50s when you were going in Blossburg? Can you describe the sort of feeling of what...
Well, there wasn't, we didn't have big classes like they have now, but I think it was just ordinary, like any other school.
Yeah.
I don't know how the schools are now. It's been so long since I've been out of school.
Yeah. Well, some of the people I've had on this program went to one-room schoolhouses. Some of them went to a little larger schools like Blossburg. I interviewed a person who had 4 people in his class at the Arnott School back about this a little later in this time period. But so what did you do at home? Did you have chores that you had to do?
Oh, yes. We had chickens. We lived on Main Street in Blossburg, and we had chickens, and my dad even raised pigs.
Right on Main Street,
Right on
Blossburg.
Main Street in Blossburg. It was right about the second house up before the little footbridge that went to the island on that street. So, no, we had chores to take care of. We had to clean out the chicken coops and a lot of other things. And then my dad always had a big garden, so we had to go out and pull weeds and things like that. So I guess we were kept busy.
Yeah. Living in town like that, you had electric and probably sewage and all that stuff, but there was a lot of people as soon as you got out of town that had it a lot rougher than that.
I'm sure they have, yeah.
Was Island Park around when you were
Yep.
a youngster? What was that like then?
Well, we used to go over there and swim in the creek.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
But there was no pool then?
There was no pool. No, we swam in the river. It was a little bit that was probably fenced off or, blocked off for swimming. Mm-hmm. So we swam over there on the island, and you could go over there and play different games and stuff, but they never had, all the things that they have for today.
Yeah. Do you remember any of the events that went on in Blossburg? I think Morris Run would have a big Polish festival or parades or anything that would happen in Blossburg as a kid?
I don't remember a whole lot. I think they played ball over there on the island and different things that people went to, but they had a refreshment stand, and that was all that they had,
Yeah.
There wasn't that much really, and they didn't have all the swings and things like that either. I mean, you just went over there and played ball or something like that.
Yeah. So what did you like to do as a kid? When you had free time, did you have friends you hung out with and did things?
Well, I guess I had family. I have sisters, and we just played outside, tag, what you usually do when you don't have any equipment that you play with, so... we played ball and stuff like that.
Did you go to the theater in Blossburg? The Victoria Theater was around then? Do you have memories of that? Anything that you remember seeing a movie there, or was it a busy time in the theater or something?
It usually was. They had a certain time where they had like a matinee that you could go to. We didn't really go to the movies a whole lot, but we did go once in a while. And we used to go up to County Bridge and go swimming too. That was a little deeper of a pond, I guess. Go up there for family picnics and, swim in the creek.
Yep. Was the other side of Main Street there then, where the plaza is now? There was a fire that took that out. I don't know when that was.
I can't remember when it was, but there was a fire that took out the Grand Union and all the stores on that side. They rebuilt some of them. We used to have a Ben Franklin store.
That was still here when I came here in 1995. Yep.
And then they had drugstores and things that are still there, I think. The town hasn't changed that much, but they have that plaza in the back where there's a lot of things that we didn't have before, like the health center and drugstore.
Yep.
And Mark Arnold had a drugstore on Main Street. He used to go swimming down in the Tioga River. He was quite a swimmer. So we had 2 pharmacies in Blossburg at one time.
Wow.
And now there's 1.
Bloss Pharmacy, yep. For groceries, was there a grocery store in town too when you were a kid, or did you go somewhere?
They had like a Grand Union. That was where the fire had started. There was a restaurant and I think a bar.
Yep.
And the 5 and 10, I think, was on the other side. No.
The plaza had the 5 and 10 when I came here, where Laurel is, but I don't know if that was a different spot before that.
It was different. It was, the 5 and 10 was over on the other side of the street. It didn't really change a whole lot, I didn't think. The bank was still there. And we had the post office down on the opposite corner. Then that was changed because that's up in the plaza.
Yeah.
So I never did hear why the fire started, but it did a lot of damage.
If it wasn't for the bank is what stopped at that big brick building on the end.
You're right.
So at the time there was trains coming through Blossburg too when you were...
There was trains.
I can't even imagine a train coming through Blossburg right up along the river. Do you remember the trains coming through?
The train was over toward the school.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I remember the trains because you had to wait to walk across the street, wait for the trains because they were there all the time. I think they had a little station there right behind these stores.
There was a big hotel at one time back near where the school was, but that's probably before that. And there was a train stop there, and I'm sure a lot of trains coming in the Foundry too and coming through.
I'm sure they did, yeah. Never thought about that. But I think the foundries have kept Blossburg going. They had W&K before, and then they built the other one up above. And a lot of people worked in the foundry.
Yeah, been a part of Blossburg for over 100 years plus.
It has. Like I said, there was 10 in our family that graduated from Blossburg. And after I graduated, I went up to Blossburg State Hospital and worked. And then I worked there and got my LPN license through Lizzie Bogart, was a director of nurses, and I stayed there until they closed it. And then we went to Mansfield. Dr. Sanford decided he wanted to open a health center from his office. So the health center was built.
I'm going to see more pictures.
This year was when we opened the health center. They built the building, and there's a picture down at Laurel Health Center someplace where we dug the first shovel of dirt before we put the health center up. And then I stayed there and worked till I was 65 years old as a nurse. After that, I was retired.
And here you are today, many years later. So your husband passed. We were talking before we went on the air a little bit. Tell me about where you met your husband.
Trying to think where I did meet him. I think at the Colonial Inn when my sister and her husband had the bar.
Your sister had the Colonial Inn?
Yeah, my sister and her husband had the Colonial Inn in Covington for a long time. And he sold it to Frank Walls, who got shot, and the place burned some, and then they did finally reopen it.
It's a new building now from when...
Right, yeah.
Where the parking lot is.
My sister lived there. She lived in the lower end of Blossburg, their house was. But then they eventually moved right into the Colonial Inn. But I think I met my husband there.
Yeah.
We were married probably around 73 or something like that, because I know when my grandson was born, we went down, when my son got married, we went down to Philadelphia to the wedding. And then in later years, my grandson was born. I only have one grandson, and I had 2 sons, but I lost one when he was 49, I think he was. He had a heart attack, passed away. But both my son and my grandson are nurses. My son is retired, and My grandson is the director of nurses at the Simpson House in Philadelphia. So he's still busy working, and he is married and has 2 children. And my son and his wife, they live in New Jersey now, so not too far from Philadelphia, just far enough out in the country, you know.
Yeah.
And my husband was a state policeman, and he originally was from Canton, Bob Vannoy, and he passed away probably about 6 or 7 years ago. He had a problem, and he was in Wellsboro Hospital, and he ended up on a respirator. So they'd taken him to Williamsport, and he was doing pretty good. And then they transferred him to Geisinger. They have a floor where only people on respirators. They're supposed to take them off, but he just never made it out of there. So I have no idea what happened, but he'd had some medical problems, and he passed away. So then I ended up on Westgate Hill by myself, and I decided to move down closer to the people in Mansfield because it was too hard for me to drive and keep the roads up and everything else. So I moved down here probably about 6 or 7 years ago.
Were there other places you're familiar with? Other places you went? Do you remember like going to Birdland or to Putnam Park or to the movie theater or roller skating or any of those type of memories to share?
We used to go down to Putnam Park and roller skate, but not too often. You know, I was a lot younger than that. And I used to go to the theater in Bloss quite frequently, usually on the weekends.
Putnam Park had a pool at one time. I learned from Grover Cleveland was on the show from Covington,
and before
there was a merry-go-round there, and yes, one of the floods I think kind of wiped it out. I'm not sure.
I didn't know that. I never knew that, but I did go down there roller skating. Though they did have roller skating, I think, at one time.
Yeah, Mansfield had skating too. Where Goodwill is now, that was roller skating rink back before my time, but that's at least I've learned from others.
You meet Goodwill in
Mansfield.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, I never got that far down.
Okay. Did you get to Birdland? Did you go that far? Ever go there?
No, not really. I think the thing of it was we stayed in Blossburg most of the time. I don't think too many people traveled around because it was scarce to find a ride, you know?
Yeah.
And besides, I think we had chores that we did at home, so we weren't probably allowed to go.
Yeah. Did you get an allowance as a kid?
Oh, I'm sure I did. I don't remember how much. Just if you needed money, you got it.
They trusted you with it. Your parents pretty thrifty when you were growing up?
Well, not too bad, really.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever wanted for anything.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was busy helping other people. When it come election time, she kept picking people up and taking them to vote. And if anybody needed a ride, they would call her and she would go and pick them up. So I know my mother was busy because she was always writing for the paper. But I think the biggest story she ever had was that plane crash down in the Narrows, remember?
Yes, up towards Blake. Well, up near where landfill is now, way up top on the above Blossburg. You're talking about
right, as you go into Blossburg.
Up on the side of the hill, though, when you come.
On the side of the hill. Yeah.
The Mohawk plane that.
Right. And she and my youngest sister walked up there, and that was the biggest story that she ever had was that plane crash.
That was national news worldwide.
I remembered when she, walked up there. She was 80-some years old when she went up there and got that story. She was certainly pleased about it, And my youngest sister said that she had gone with her. She wasn't that old. So I said, now out of a family of, 10? There's 2 of us left. My youngest sister lives up in Horseheads, and she's married to a guy from Bloss, Bob Thomas. He was born and raised up across from the houses. Sawmill.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yep.
His grandparents lived up there, and he was raised by them, and they live in Horseheads, New York.
Wow. We had Harold House, Pee Wee House on the program. He was fascinating talking about...
Yeah, I'm sure he had a lot of...
Yeah, he was at the plane crash. They have to build a road to get the emergency crew in for that.
I'm sure he was, yeah.
He told me about a train that hit a car and killed the passengers in Blossburg, and they all went on a field trip in school to go see it back when he was a kid, which just kind of like, wow.
I remember that. Maybe that was after I got out.
Yeah, I'm not sure where his age is compared to yours, but...
I think he might be a little bit younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I do remember Pee Wee House. There's a lot of things that changed. We used to have doctors in town, and they would come when you called them. They came
for house call.
For house calls, Dr. Matters and Dr. Brazito. Then they had their offices right in town. And it was a little bit trying after they passed away and left because then you had to go to Wellsboro or...
Yeah, they didn't come to you. This is a big...
This is a lot different than what we did, people were used to, the older people in Blossburg. When the Island Park was built, the pool and stuff, that was a big thing, but that happened later in life. But they did have a playground over there. They had a lot of the ball games and things that they're having now. They had them over there.
Jan, it looks like we're running out of time here, but I'll tell you what, can you join us again next week?
Sure.
All right.
Why not?
We got plenty more to talk about here. So you'll be back again for part 2 here on KC 101. Again, brought to you by Eisenhower's, Tioga County, Harley-Davidson, South Mansfield. Looking for a motorcycle, looking for service work to be done. Just looking to walk around and get out of the winter blues and check out the motorcycles. Go see them. Spring will be here before we know it. Eisenhower's, Tioga County.